Elden Ring has 165 bosses, and an additional 42 in the shadow of the Erdtree DLC. In all respects, it is a game overflowing with content, so why does it feel so empty? The Lands Between is a world that feels like it should be full, not just because of its size, but because of the way everything in it is built, with a kind of scale and intention that suggests you're meant to support something far larger than what's actually there. And the longer you spend moving through churches with no congregation, and castles with no kingdom left to protect, the harder it becomes to ignore the sense that something is missing. So why does it feel like this? Why does a world this beautiful, this vast, this carefully constructed, feel like it's been holding its breath for 1,000 years? And why, the longer you spend in it, do you feel increasingly more alone? To answer that, you first have to understand the Shattering, because without it, nothing about the Lands Between makes sense. Long before the time of the Tarnished, Queen Marika was the vessel of the Elden Ring, the foundation of all order, all grace, and all life in the world. The Elden Ring wasn't just a symbol of power, it was the actual architecture of reality, and for a time, it held. Then came the Night of the Black Knives. Godwyn the Golden, Marika's firstborn son, a demigod so admired that even his enemies respected him, was assassinated, killed by blades imbued with a stolen fragment of the Rune of Death that had the power to destroy his soul and leave him in a state that was neither life nor death. And Marika, for all her power, could do nothing about it. In response to Godwyn's death, and to rebel against the greater will, she used her hammer to shatter the Elden Ring. As punishment for her offense, Marika alongside her other half Radagon were imprisoned inside the Erdtree. Consequently, the grace that once guided everyone in the Lands Between disappeared overnight. This cycle of death and rebirth that the Erdtree maintained simply stopped, and the demigods, Marika's own children, went to war over the fragments of the broken ring, each one convinced that if they could just gather enough pieces, they could remake the world in their image. And the people living in the Lands Between were caught in the middle of all of it. Without grace, without the Erdtree's blessing, and without any sense of order or purpose, they hollowed, becoming shells of what they once were. And for the first time in the history of the Lands Between, death became permanent. The Erdtree had always been the world's way of replenishing itself, turning loss into renewal, and while it still stood, the thing that held it all together was gone, and nothing rose to fill its place. So during the wars that followed, the Lands Between simply accumulated its dead. For the first time, the people were truly irreversibly alone. And the world never lets you forget it. When you ride across empty plains with ruined buildings all around you, or a bridge made of stone and look up to see the mountaintops of the giants, there is a specific kind of loneliness you feel, the kind that comes from being somewhere beautiful that has clearly been through something terrible. That isn't atmosphere added on top of story, that is the story. The emptiness is the Shattering made physical. You are riding through the consequences of one woman's decision to break the world. But here's what makes Elden Ring genuinely extraordinary. That emptiness isn't just meaningful, it's breathtaking. There is something about vast ruined spaces that does something to you that no amount of content can replicate. When you crest a hill in Limgrave and see the Erdtree burning gold on the horizon, impossibly large, impossibly distant, and between you and it is just wind, grass, and the ruins of something that used to matter, that image carries a weight that a world filled with quest markers and waypoints simply cannot produce. The scale of the emptiness makes the world feel real in a way that busy worlds never do, because the real world has empty spaces. The real world has places where something used to be and now isn't. The Lands Between understands that, and it uses those spaces to make you feel small in the best way possible. Small against the history of the world, and small against the scale of what was lost. Look at Caelid. It is a desolate barren landscape that is the physical scar left by two demigods whose war was so catastrophic that it poisoned the earth itself. The vast, horrifying beauty exists because the land remembers what happened there, even if no one is left to tell you about it. In Caelid, if you travel to roughly the center, past the Swamp of Rot, you reach Selena, the town of sorcery. As you enter the town, you are met with an eerie silence. The buildings are intact, the streets are still there, the structure of a real place hasn't collapsed, but the people are gone. What's left are ghosts, invisible until you're close enough to feel them, still moving through the same spaces they once lived in, without any sense of why. And every part of the Lands Between reflects that same pattern. Nokron, the Eternal City, was once home to the Nox, an influential society of astrologers devoted to the stars, until they angered the Greater Will and were banished underground, forced to exist beneath a false night sky, waiting for a Lord of Light who never came. An entire civilization buried beneath the world you're riding through, their city still standing, their temples and architecture still reaching upward towards a sky they can no longer see. But the people who built all of it, who gave it meaning, purpose, and life, are gone. stripped away centuries before you ever arrive. Now it sits silent and solemn, bathed in ghostly light, a vast sprawling city with nothing left inside it but the echo of everything it used to be. Lindell, the heart of the Golden Order, is no different. Once the most powerful city in the lands between, the seat of Marika's reign, reduced to a city of ash, its streets still standing, but drained of every person and every purpose that made it matter. The lands between was a functioning world, filled with people and purpose, until a war that had nothing to do with most of them erased both. So when you finally come across someone sitting by a fire or standing alone in a ruin, it hits differently than it would with any other game. Because the world has already spent hours making you feel the scale of what was lost. Every region you've passed through, every abandoned castle or buried city has quietly built up this overwhelming sense that the lands between used to be full of people who mattered, and now it isn't. So a single living person, with a name, a story, and a reason for still being here, feels significant in a way that's almost impossible to explain. You want to know how they survived. You want to know what they're holding on to, because in a world this drained of life, the fact that they're still here feels like a miracle. Dialos Hoslo is a perfect example of this. You first meet him at the Round Table Hold, a man searching for his missing servant, clinging to a sense of honor in a world that has made honor almost impossible to hold onto. His questline takes you through loss, failure, and eventually to Jarberg, a small hidden village of living jars that have no understanding of the world beyond them. And Dialos, a man who spent his whole life chasing a legacy that never fit him, finds something worth protecting in the most forgotten corner of the lands between. When he dies defending those jars, nobody remembers it, nobody marks it. The world doesn't acknowledge it at all, but you do, because the emptiness of the world made you pay attention. In a game constantly pulling you towards the next objective, Elden Ring's silence forces you to notice the things that survive within it. And in a landscape this drained of life, that choice to care about the little details carries a weight it could never have in a busier world. Every quest, every conversation, and every NPC still standing in the ruins feels like archaeology, like pulling something back from the silence that was trying to swallow it whole. But there's another layer to this emptiness that runs even deeper, and it has to do with you. Because you don't just explore the lands between, you are summoned into it. You're a tarnished, one of many who were once cast out, stripped of grace, and left to rot beyond the boundaries of the world. And now, something long dead is calling you back. But even that calling is strange. The guidance of grace doesn't feel like a guiding hand so much as a faint echo of something that used to have direction. It points you forward, yes, but never explains why. Never guarantees meaning, nor promises that what you're moving towards is anything more than another ruin waiting at the end of the road. It is a leftover signal from a world that no longer has a functioning center. And you are not the only one responding to it. Every other tarnished you encounter is also being pulled by the same broken thread of grace, but none of you are truly working together. You pass each other as phantoms, you summon echoes of other players who don't fully exist in your world. You see messages left behind like traces of thought from people who were never really there in the first place. Even invasions itself feel like a fracture in reality, other versions of you, or others like you, bleeding into your timeline. The world is not just empty, it is layered with absence. Even the Round Table Hold reflects this. A place that should feel like a gathering of purpose instead feels like a waiting room for people who don't know what they're waiting for. Everyone there is chosen, but no one agrees on what that actually means anymore. They speak of destiny, order, and becoming Elden Lord, but it all feels like inherited language from a system that collapsed long before any of them arrived. And this is also what people get wrong when they call Elden Ring's lore obscure. They think the story is hidden. It isn't. It is written in every part of the world you see. That is why Elden Ring feels so empty, because if it didn't, the world wouldn't make sense. The game revolves around fixing a past tragedy, and all tragedies leave destruction. The emptiness of the world reflects that, and as you progress through the game, you truly understand what it means. Even at the end, once you have defeated everything the Shattering left behind, and take the throne as Elden Lord, you still feel the emptiness. This should feel like a conclusion of the past, and a moment to move forward into the Age of Order. But in reality, nothing changes. There's no sense of recovery, no people returning, no shift in the world that acknowledges the scale of what you've achieved. The throne is there, the title is there, but the world itself doesn't react. It just stays exactly as it was before. And that's where it clicks into place. The emptiness isn't something you pass through on your way to the ending. It's the state of the world from start to finish. Nothing you do replaces it or fills it in, because it isn't a gap in the world. It is the world. The lands between doesn't gradually come back to life as you progress. It remains in the same broken condition you find it in at the beginning. That's why it feels the way it does. The loneliness isn't added on top of the experience, it's what the experience is built out of. And once you see that, it stops feeling like a world you're exploring, and starts feeling like one you've arrived in after it has already ended.